Welcome forward here. I'd like to share another treasure by Dale Carnegie. This book is entitled How to Remember Names. It's published in 1967. If you want to improve your ability to remember names, you must first sell yourself in the importance of doing it. If your progress in remembering names, learning to ski, or develop any other skill will depend largely on how strongly you desire to do it. Stoke the fires of your desire to remember names by constantly reminding yourself how the ability to remember names will 1. Increase your popularity. 2. Help you in your business or profession. 3. Help you win friends. 4. Give sparkle to your social contracts. 5. Help you practice the golden rule by, quote, doing unto others, end of quote. And 6. Prevent embarrassment by showing you are genuinely interested in others. Remember that a man's name is to him the sweetest sound in any language. It is his badge of individuality. Barnum, the circus entrepreneur, liked his name so well that he offered to give his grandson, C.H. Seeley, an additional $25,000 provided he would call himself Barnum. Seeley, being Duke, the cigarette king, offered to give Trinity College in Durham, North Carolina, $40 million if the college would change its name to Duke University. Step 1. Impressions. The first step in remembering a person's name is to 1. Hear his name clearly, and 2. Get a clear impression of them as a person. But do we? When we are introduced to a stranger, their name usually sounds like Mr. Kitgall or Mrs. Cinch. I want to meet you, Mr. Linterperks. And a moment later, his face is just a blur. We must keep in mind that what we really want to do is to remember people. Their names are secondary. So it is important to give people your total attention, become genuinely interested in them, and want to remember them. Remembering names is only an offshoot of the desire to remember the people behind the names. Therefore, we should get a clear impression of the person whose name we should remember. Otherwise, remembering names becomes kind of a gimmick, merely to prove our prowess in remembering, when it should be the result of our desire to make the other person, not ourselves, feel important. A. 5 ways to get a clear, vivid impression of a name. 1. When you are being introduced to anyone, listen. L-I-S-T-E-N. Concentrate on getting the name right. Think of only one thing, the name. 2. If you do not hear the name clearly, say, quote, I am sorry, I didn't get your name. Will you please repeat it? End of quote. 3. If a name has been repeated and you still have not grasped it, then say, I am sorry, I still didn't catch. Will you please spell it for me? Remember, you are taking and talking about their name. They will be immensely pleased because you are taking such a personal interest in their name. 4. Some names are so difficult that even after they have been spelled, you may not be able to repeat them. They say, quote, your name is unusual and I want to remember it. May I write it as you spell it? End of quote. Other names should be written as soon as possible. Get an eye impression as well as an ear impression. The nerves that lead from the eye to the brain are 20 times as large as the nerves that lead from the ear to the brain. The Chinese say, quote, "One time seeing is worth 1,000 times hearing." End of quote. And 5. Use your willpower, which is your, quote, "want to," quote, end of quote, power. Say to yourself, quote, "I want to remember this name and I will," end of quote. B. 3 ways to get a clear, vivid impression of the person. 1. Observe the facial characteristics, general shape of head, hairline, brow, and distinguishing features. 2. Get a clear impression of size, short, thin, tall, large, or small. 3. Get a distinct impression of his voice, whether deeply or high, thin, resonant, clear, or husky. Step 2. Repetition. The second step is memorizing names is repetition. You can remember almost anything if you will only repeat it often enough. The Al-Azhar University of Cairo, Egypt, has about 20,000 students. In order to enter the university, each of these students has to repeat from memory the Quran, the Mohammedan Bible. The Quran is about as long as the New Testament. 3 days are required to repeat it. You could learn to repeat the New Testament from memory if you started at an early age and kept it up as long enough, but you will have no difficulty in remembering a name if you only repeat it often enough. 8 ways to engrave a name on your memory by repetition. 1. When you are introduced to someone, repeat their name back immediately. Don't merely say, "How do you do?" Say, "How do you do, Mr. Blank or Mrs. Blank?" 2. Use the stranger's name several times in a conversation. For example, you might say, "Well, I never thought of it that way, but perhaps you're right, Mr. Blank." If you make it a point to do this, you are not only engraving the name in your memory, but you are also pleasing your listener. Naturally, do not overdo it. 3. Repeat the stranger's name silently to yourself while he is talking. When I am introduced to a Mr. Leonard Towns, I kept saying to myself rapidly, "Leonard Towns, Leonard Towns, Leonard Towns." If I don't do that, I am liable to forget in 10 seconds whether his name is Leonard Towns or London Tower. 4. Work with only a few names at a time and repeat them to yourself several times before attempting to remember additional names. Psychological tests have repeatedly demonstrated that you can memorize anything twice as rapidly if you work at it in brief intervals rather than in one long pool. These tests have shown that if you spend an hour trying to memorize something at one sitting, your memory works at about 50% of the possible efficiency. In fact, you can memorize almost as much in 30 minutes spread over 3 days as you can memorize a 1-hour stretch. So the point is, memorize, quote, by the littles, end of quote. Review frequently and quickly the material you want to anchor in your mind. If you are introduced to a group of people at one time, concentrate intensely on each name as you hear it. During the 4 or 5 seconds between introductions, look at the person you were introduced to and repeat their name and yourself rapidly. After all the introductions have been completed, immediately glance back at the group to see if you can recall the name of each person you have met. Keep on glancing back and reviewing, glancing back and reviewing. You will be astonished to discover how quickly people will begin to talk about your ability to remember names. Ability, my eye. It is just plain hard work plus, quote, want to, end quote. Power. 5. Refresh your memory of a person's name immediately before you are to see them. That is what Dwight D. Eisenhower did when he inspected his troops training in England, preparing for the invasion. Each morning before General Eisenhower set out on his tour of inspections, he would study a list of names of the officers he was scheduled to meet that day. 6. If possible, talk about the name of the man you have just met, or the person that you just met. And if it is an odd name which you never heard before, well, why not say so? If you had an old sweetheart by that name, say so. I once met a Mr. Tannenbaum. I remarked that his name meant Christmas tree in German. He agreed that it did, and went on to tell me when his ancestors came over from Germany, and so on. In other words, if possible, make conversation about their name. 7. When you leave the person you have just met and say their name again, quote, I am glad to have met you, Mr. Blank or Miss Blank. 8. Review the names you really want to remember each night before you retire to try to see the other person's outstanding characteristics as you recall their name. This reviewing is most important because we forget as much in the first 8 hours after we have learned something as we do during the next 30 days. Step 3. Association. The strongest bond you can form in remembering names is to have an association between the face impression and some pictures the name suggests. 6 of the most common ways to make associations. 1. Business. You may be able to make the memory of a man's face recall his business, and then make his business recall his name. For example, I once met a Dr. Ivory in California. He was a dentist. You might recall his name by first thinking of teeth, then tusks, then ivory, and then name. Here are some more names which readily tie in with business. F. Granite, construction engineer. W. Bacon, grocer. T. Woodward, carpenter. Dr. P. Lightfoot, chiropodist. J. Landman, real estate agent. J. Lacey, shoe manufacturer. 2. Rhyme. Make a rhyme using a person's name with some characteristic of that person or with an opposite characteristic. Then, fix it in your memory with a mind picture that recalls the rhyme. The rhyme then recalls the name. Suppose you meet a man, he's called Hanuman, who is always laughing and telling jokes. A good rhyme would be, Honey Man is a funny man, then making a mental picture of him rolling over with laughter. You meet Jack Blaine. A quick rhyme would be, Jack Bain has a pain. Picture him doubled over in pain and moaning and groaning. Oh, I don't know about that one. Remember, the sillier the picture is, the more exaggerated, the more fantastic it is, the easier it will be to remember. Here's a few examples. Ellie Pete is hard to beat. Joni Leach can make you speech. What? Tommy Lester loves to gesture. Johnny Muse blew a fuse. Goodness gracious. 3. Appearance. This method involves associating a person's name with his real or imagined appearance, or with a characteristic of his personality. Set the characteristic that first impresses you. It may be their hair, or their hairline, their eyes, their ears, nose, complexion, chin, facial appearance, shoulders, or any other permanent physical characteristic. Let us see how we can remember the name of my good friend and business associate, P.H. Whitting. Mr. Whitting has white hair. An easy way to remember him would be to imagine his hair is really black, but he likes his hair white, so every morning he takes a 10-gallon bottle of white ink and pours it generously over his head and rubs it in. That gives him white hair, and he now has, if we can get a picture or a mind picture of him pouring white ink on his head and rubbing it in, then the next time we see him with white hair, we recall the picture and then the white ink and say it over quickly, and you'll have Mr. White Ink. Oh, goodness. Here are some other examples. Tom Baldwin. Very little hair, completely bald. Bill Fuller. A heavy man. He is full of food. Fred Harrington. Bushy hair. He has ton of hair. Harrington. 4. Meaning. If the name itself has a well-known meaning, you may find it easy to associate such a person with the known meaning of his name. For example, if a man's name is Fisher, you will quite naturally associate the man with fishing. You may like to see him struggling to land a mammoth fish. Names which have a meaning in themselves may be classified in a dozen different ways. A few classifications are listed below. You can readily enlarge upon this list. Please remember that the classification itself is not important. This is simply another way to remind you that you must think about a name if you really wish to remember it. Classifying a name does require such thought. A few considerations. The animal kingdom: bear, lion, fox. Vegetable kingdom: root, forest, or thorn. And mineral kingdom: stone, steel, water. Then there's colors: brown, gray, or white. And then there's employment, which is a carpenter, mason, or a butcher. And then physical characteristics: strong, long, biggers. Then there are parts of the body: hand, foot, head. Comparative adjectives such as fine, best, or good. And then mental traits: noble, meek, and cross. 5. Mental pictures. To use this method of association, you must first use your imagination. You may have some difficulty remembering some names using the 4 methods of association previously mentioned. Because these names are usually long and involved, it is necessary to break them up into syllables and construct a picture out of them. In order to force a picture, it is often necessary to make radical changes in the name. This is the way to do it. Paint a mind picture of the person whose name you wish to remember doing something that reminds you of their name. Have the face and body of the person you wish to remember in the picture so that when the picture comes to mind, you get both the face and the name. Be sure the picture is absurd and exaggerated and that it depicts motion. For example, Hamilton. Picture Mr. Hamilton with a human head but a ham body. See him walk onto a platform scale. The weigher adjusts the balances and shouts, "You weigh 1 ton." Oh. Then Van Hatten. Picture Mr. Van Hatten driving a huge van. Instead of the usual top, the van is covered by a gigantic hat. Van hat on. And then there's Warlowski. Dress Mr. Warlowski in a uniform. Under his arm he has a law book and he is wearing one ski. Warlowski. 6. Similar name. To use this method, associate a person with someone you already know who has the same name or similar name. This is a very effective way to remember the Smiths and the Joneses. Make a mental picture of the new person doing something with the person you already know, such as building a house, shaking hands, or having a fight. In a nutshell, how to remember names. Step 1. Impression. We concentrate on the name, the person's face, size, and voice. Step 2. Repetition. We repeat the name over and over. Step 3. Association. We associate the name with one of the following. 1. Business. 2. Rhyme. 3. Appearance or personality characteristics. 4. Meaning. 5. Mind picture. 6. Similar name. To help you remember the 6 associational methods, think about the word Brahms, Bramms, composed of the first letter. Such concludes this little treasure of a book pamphleture here, How to Remember Names by Dale Carnegie.